The flowers slipped from my hand the moment I saw her. A stranger was standing beside my wife's grave in the pouring rain, one trembling hand pressed against the cold stone while tears ran down her face. For 3 years, I had believed I was the only person who still came there. I had never seen her before. Yet when she turned toward me, her expression wasn't one of guilt or fear. It was relief. And then she whispered the words that changed everything I thought I knew about my wife. He told me to find you. My name is Daniel, and before that morning, my life had become painfully predictable. Every Sunday, I drove to the cemetery, placed flowers beside my wife's headstone, cleaned away the leaves, and sat there for an hour. Sometimes I talked about our daughter, Emily. Sometimes I talked about work. Sometimes I said nothing at all. My wife, Sarah, had been gone for 3 years, but grief had made time strange. Everyone else had moved forward. Friends stopped asking how I was doing. Relatives stopped mentioning her name because they thought they were helping. Even Emily had learned to smile when people asked about her mother. But I couldn't move forward. That morning, the cemetery was almost empty. A gray mist hung between the trees, and rain covered the rows of headstones with a silver shine. I was carrying a bouquet of pink flowers when I noticed the woman. She was kneeling beside Sarah's grave. At first, I thought she had mistaken the location. Then I noticed the way she looked at the headstone. There was something deeply personal in her expression. She wasn't simply visiting a grave. She was saying goodbye. I walked closer, and she suddenly turned around. Her eyes were red from crying. She looked at me for several seconds before asking whether I was Daniel. When I nodded, she closed her eyes as if she had finally found something she had been searching for. Her name was Rachel. She explained that she had known Sarah years earlier. Not through work or family, but through a community center where Sarah volunteered every Thursday evening. Sarah had always been the kind of person who noticed people others ignored. She helped serve meals, collected donated clothing, and spent hours listening to people who simply needed someone to hear them. Rachel had been one of those people. She had been struggling with homelessness and family problems at the time. She had almost given up on rebuilding her life. Sarah had helped her find temporary accommodation, connected her with a job program, and most importantly, convinced her that one difficult chapter didn't have to become her entire story. I listened without saying a word. I knew Sarah was kind, but I had never realized how many lives she had touched. Then Rachel reached inside her coat and pulled out an old envelope. My heart stopped. The handwriting on the front belonged to Sarah. Rachel told me Sarah had given it to her several months before her death. She had asked Rachel to keep it safe and only open it if something happened to her. My hands trembled as I took the envelope. Inside was a letter. Sarah had written that she knew I would struggle after she was gone. She knew I would probably isolate myself and convince myself that staying broken was somehow a way of proving how much I loved her. Then she wrote something that completely broke me. She said that loving someone who had died didn't mean you had to stop living. She asked Rachel to find me if she ever noticed that I was disappearing into my grief. Sarah had apparently told Rachel that I would need someone who understood what it felt like to lose a piece of your life. I sat down in the wet grass. For 3 years, I had been angry that Sarah had left me. Now I realized that even before she died, she had been thinking about how to help me survive without her. If you believe in kindness, second chances, and the way one person's goodness can change another person's life, please like this video, share it with someone who might need hope, and subscribe to the channel. Sometimes the smallest act of kindness becomes a gift that continues long after we think the story is over. Rachel sat a few feet away from me. She told me she hadn't come because Sarah owed her anything. She had come because Sarah had once helped her when she had nowhere else to turn. And now Rachel wanted to return that kindness. Over the next few weeks, something unexpected happened. Rachel began visiting the community center again. I started going with her. At first, I told myself I was only going because I wanted to understand more about Sarah's life. But slowly, I began helping too. I sorted donated clothes. I carried boxes. I helped repair old furniture. Emily started volunteering on weekends. For the first time since Sarah's death, our home began to feel less like a museum of memories and more like a place where life was happening again. Rachel didn't try to replace Sarah. Nobody could. Instead, she helped me understand that remembering someone didn't require staying trapped in the past. One afternoon, while cleaning an old storage room at the community center, we found a box filled with photographs. There was Sarah, standing beside volunteers, children, elderly people, and families who had received help. On the back of one photograph, Sarah had written a sentence. "Kindness is never wasted. It simply travels." I stared at those words for a long time. That was what had happened. Sarah's kindness had traveled from her to Rachel. From Rachel to me. And from me to Emily. And then, through all of us, to people we had never even met. A year after Rachel first appeared at my wife's grave, we returned there together. This time, I wasn't alone. Emily brought flowers. Rachel carried a small box filled with photographs from the community center. I brought Sarah's letter. We stood quietly beside the grave while sunlight appeared through the clouds. For the first time in 3 years, I didn't feel like I was visiting a place where my life had ended. I felt like I was visiting the place where Sarah's legacy had begun. If this story touched your heart, please like, share, and subscribe. Your support helps these stories reach people who need a reminder that compassion still exists, even during the hardest seasons of life. And before the final moment, I have one special request. Comment, "Kindness travels farther than we know," if you believe that one good deed can continue changing lives long after the person who performed it is gone. As we walked away from the grave, Emily suddenly took my hand. I looked back one last time. The flowers were bright against the gray stone. For years, I had thought Sarah's final chapter had been written when she died. I was wrong. Her story continued in Rachel. It continued in Emily. It continued in me. And perhaps that was the greatest gift she could have left behind. She hadn't asked a stranger to find me because she wanted me to forget her. She had asked someone to find me because she wanted me to remember what she had always believed. That even after heartbreak, there is still a reason to keep walking.